start with pupils, I suppose. So they've had this, absolutely cataclysmic disruption in some ways. The impact that we should be trying to address here isn't necessarily the most obvious one. This idea that there has been lost learning. I think the thing I'd be more concerned about is things like gaps between rich and poor having been extended. As crude as this is, kids in middle class homes aren't going to suffer as much as kids in poorer families are going to. There's just no two ways about that. We need to be very, very careful about dealing with mental health issues as children come back into schools. We owe it to them to do absolutely everything we can, not just to shove them back into schools as quickly as possible.
Today we are setting out the phases in which we will aim to ease lockdown. From the 11th of August, all schools will reopen. However, to allow appropriate physical distancing, children will return to a blended model of part-time in school and part-time at home learning.
I've been a bit critical of the government's handling of this, purely on the basis that I think what they've ended up announcing just now is what people were saying was always going to be announced weeks and weeks and weeks ago. And if it had been announced weeks ago, it would have been further ahead. There are some pretty massive practical issues with a lot of this. Things like being able to do, social distancing in the classroom. The sheer numbers and physical spaces involved are going to cause problems. There's also going to have to be a focus on making sure that data is still available. We're going to need to know what's happening in sufficient detail to make quite difficult decisions about things like schools opening and closing, for example. The UK government's approach to this has been unhelpful, to be mild about it. Their approach is essentially, we want schools back open, we want things going back to normal. It probably is worth asking whether the plan was ever really seriously to get everybody back in school on the 1st of June, or whether this might have been about, trying to distract and deflect attention, to deflect a bit of blame, blame the terrible lefty teaching unions and stuff like that for holding back the country and keeping us shut down, etc., etc. There's none of that in Scotland. It's been unbelievable to see how resilient the Scottish education system is, and particularly Scottish teachers are, particularly given how the system's been treated over the last 10 to 15 years. Teachers were essentially expected to become online learning experts in the space of a few days, and unsurprisingly, it doesn't work that way. I don't think anybody should be fighting to restore what we would call normal. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have what is ultimately the big conversation about education. The Scottish Conservatives' education paper they've released today talks about guaranteeing access to technology. It's quite a big deal. 13% of households have got no internet access at home in Scotland. I'd be quite keen to see an education system where the way in which we assess, the way in which we issue qualifications can be much, much improved. It's far too focused on the idea of sitting down on one day of the year and writing a bunch of stuff out, being a measure of a good student. We don't want normal back in education. Normal was so bad at points that it's absolutely shameful. When I say that as somebody who is part of that system, who teaches in that system,